Hey everybody, Zack with Phipps Brittain Real Estate on the Canadian Real Estate Channel with our friend Yasser at 555 Construction. Today we are talking about how our clients are saving $80,000 by building an ADU right here in St. Catharines.
What's it going to cost to create an accessory dwelling unit in this rear yard? And then what are the returns that are going to be coming in from a rental standpoint and possibly an appreciation standpoint? Yep. I think here we started maybe 5-6 weeks ago. Like by this weekend,
yeah,
like we're gonna have a roof on here.
So we're basically 2 months from when we know we're going through the project to permit. Right after permit, weather permitting, we're going.
So we want as minimal disruption as possible. They can keep on living their lives and working from home and their pets and whatever they got.
That is a concern though,
here.
Right.
Let's call it 150 grand on this ADU.
Yeah.
And you're bringing in 2021.
2000. You guys remember the 1% rule of yesterday, many years ago? You're building better than the 1% rule. All right, guys. So I partnered with our clients to find and acquire a legal duplex in the city of St. Catharines. A big reason for this, Yasser, was they were offering sexy grants for investors and homeowners that were looking to add residential units. We got a nice shortage here. So our clients are going to take advantage of up to an $80,000 grant to add an ADU. I helped them shop and acquire the property. We brought in Yasser once we got the property under contract to do a feasibility study. How does that kind of work?
Yeah, so whenever you're shopping with a realtor, especially one that's well-versed, and if you don't have one that's well-versed in this multi-unit residential space or small-scale conversion space, make sure you reach out to one because it's very, very important that the planning phase is as tight as possible so that the construction phase can go easy. Smooth. Exactly, right? Especially when we have, a tenanted building, there's a lot of moving parts here. So they put in their offer, they had their conditional period. We came in and we brought in our planning partner, so we used Deck Inc., an architectural engineer firm out of the greater Hamilton area, and then we run some numbers. We see what the services look like, we check zoning, we check bylaw, we make sure that we didn't miss anything on our end so that our clients are in the most successful position moving forward. After we check the zoning, the bylaw, the services, we can kind of go into creating a budget, okay? What's it gonna cost to create an accessory dwelling unit in this rear yard? And then what are the returns that are gonna be coming in from a rental standpoint and possibly an appreciation standpoint to kind of make it all make sense. And then, as Zach alluded to, that term sexy, it is sexy. It's not fluff. This is not a headline. In St. Catharines, amongst other cities, which we'll talk about later on, you're seeing $40,000 grants for a finished basement or interior secondary dwelling unit or additional dwelling unit, but in the rear it goes right up to $80,000. So for us, for the feasibility test, if we can subsidize, or at least the city can subsidize the $80,000, everybody wins. The city wins, the investor wins, the future tenant wins. Yeah. It's kind of a perfect match.
This was a really good opportunity for the clients to add an already existing multi-unit project or property to their portfolio. We can get some rental income coming in, but then add instant value and cash flow, and then get a nice chunk of that back, right back in their pockets, either reinvest in the property or maybe go on and do another one. So we're gonna get into the steps of how we found it, how we got prepped for it, and then how we're gonna build it. So let's go do that now. All right, guys, so when we partnered with our clients to help find and acquire this type of property, things we really want to be conscious about is going to be the zoning and the lot size and location. Specifically the zoning. Common misconception, 3 units on any residential lot in Ontario, generally speaking. So if you're looking to go from a 1 single-family detached house to 2 duplex or even a legal triplex, pretty much good to go. But where we can run into problems is there's differences in each city, and there may also be specific requirements for things you need like accessibility, parking, minor variances, frontage. For this particular one, I know we already checked and we started looking, but what kind of things do people need to be concerned about when they're looking at a specific lot?
Yeah, so if you kind of go down that checklist, because as Zach alluded to, pretty much a blanket statement, up to 3 units in Ontario via Bill 23. It's a broad stroke. It's a broad stroke response. Each municipality is going to absorb it a little bit differently. Yeah. So you're going to have some setbacks or some bylaw requirements is the more technical term that you should be aware of, right? One big one is parking. right? Here we were lucky enough, we're fortunate enough that Zach and his clients were able to find one of the double parking, so that gave us an advantage there. If we had single parking, we're having a little bit of a different conversation, and then we would continue on with our feasibility study based on that. Another one would be distance from the principal home, so the dwelling behind us, to the rear dwelling, and then how far are you away from each neighbor of the yard. So you should have 3 neighbors there. So once again, stuff that we would do in the feasibility test. So zoning should give you a quick check mark, and then the bylaw, we'll dive in there with our planning partners to make sure that's nice and kosher. And the building code stuff is fairly easy. If it's net new, meaning it didn't exist before, obviously we're going to be building code compliant.
Yes.
As we're working through our planning team, they work directly with the city in getting the architectural design done, getting your conceptual design done, so you can give them some feedback on what you like, what you don't like, and then beyond that, getting the actual permit submission into the city so that we can get back the permits and start the construction work. Really, the only time you need to worry about the OBC before you go in is something like a garage conversion.
Because existing structure.
Bingo. We'd like to come in there with our planning partners and make sure, is this thing standing? Is it going to stay standing, or is it falling over? The eye test is a good test, but you definitely need some sort of engineering stamp on that to proceed. On the planning side, the beautiful thing about working with Zach and his clients is we were brought in so early, started the planning work
Before we even firmed up on the deal.
Exactly. So the previous owners had this property while we were already working forward, which is a beautiful thing because we save time and money that way, right? So we close sometime in November and December. Everybody knows no one likes to work in the Christmas season. The city definitely does not like to work in the Christmas season. So really, in January and February, we had a 2-month window to get our permits in place. They closed. They received the permits shortly after closing. And on we go with the construction.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to highlight that we could get into the weeds about this specific project and the planning, how we're submitting the design and the permit. Every place is a little bit more unique. If you guys are looking in specific cities for general types of properties that are going to sell at attractive price points and likely be able to do projects like this, just to narrow your search process, get in touch with a local expert. Find somebody that does these projects in the local market so they can say, hey, look, we're looking for this size of property with this type of home on it in this type of neighborhood at this price point to really narrow down that search. Once you look at a lot of those properties, you can bring in Yasser and his team to do a quick feasibility study, say, hey, look, generally speaking, this is things to be concerned about, this is how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and then it goes case-by-case basis for your permit applications and actually engaging in a construction professional to give you a real plan and budget to go ahead and build. So we'll get into the details on the actual planning and building so you guys can see what it's actually going to look like. Okay, guys, so that's a little bit about what types of properties and kind of things to consider before you actually start shopping and offering on them. The process, Yasser and I are going to walk through from when we found it, acquired it, actually getting the permit, and then getting it started and built. They're going to frame this in a day. How crazy is that? And then at the end of the video, me and Yasser go through some quick tips on things from the acquisition perspective and then the construction perspective to hopefully save you guys time and money. For this, we get the property under contract, Yasser. I give you guys a call, say, hey, we got a great project under contract. It's conditional. You come do a site visit. We do our feasibility study. You collaborate with the purchasers and the investors and say, hey, I think this is how long it's going to take to build. This is kind of some design suggestions. Here's how much it's going to cost. Here's some potential things we should take care of. At that time, is that when you guys start engaging, whether it be in a contract or an agreement to actually execute on the project and get the permits in?
Yeah, bingo. So I'll break all that down a little bit slower, step by step. So you used the term earlier, case by case. I'm glad you used that term because
it is.
I want to emphasize it. Every city, every lot, 40 by 100, 50 by 100, that's your standard traditional lots. Yeah. Those are good, but sometimes you get different size or shaped lots, so we want to make sure that we get in there. But you go back to the process. You put in the offer. Maybe you have an existing property that you want to expand on or intensify. We'll come in. We'll do the test. We do a lot of it virtually, actually, and then we'll come to site.
Yeah, you guys did a bunch virtually for this, actually, and then you and your guy came on site and actually took a look at the finer detail.
Exactly.
Water, electricity, where the wastewater's going, everything.
On the zoning and bylaw on that side of the planning, you can learn a lot of it online, and our planning partners do a great job of that. And then we'll come back to site to make sure that we have our services checked in, which we'll get into construction in a few minutes here. Obviously, you can see what's happening behind us. But to carry on into the process, Once we have our feasibility test done and we create what we call a proposal or a budget, then the client can go back and say, okay, I have a good budgetary amount that I can work with. Go back to talk to my finance partners, my banks, my mortgage advisors, whether it's a home equity line or I have some cash in the reserve, whatever the case may be, and they can make a business decision on moving forward.
Because they can say, hey, here's what we're acquiring for, here's build costs, here's what my rental income is going to be after. Does this make sense before I actually go and firm up on the deal? Exactly,
because you can't provide a true estimate or to proceed if you don't know anything like 100%. that. And it's alarming or daunting when you've just put an offer in on a property, right? So you want to make the best decision on that to release all your conditions and be the future owner of this property. So in this case, usually give yourself 2 months there.
Yep.
Okay, so that little proposal window is about a week, and then 2 months is the rest of the planning phase, just to be clear here. Okay?
That's when we're doing design, what size, where it's going to be on the lot, how the services are going to be run, basically to get to the point where you're making your permit application as quickly as possible, but as detailed as possible.
Exactly.
Because first permit app, that's where you really want to make sure you're really prepared. They know you're serious, so if they come back to you with that condition list or they come back to you with some changes, you guys are like, yeah, we're already ready to go.
Exactly. So what Zach's alluding to is the condition list. So once you submit this to the city, they have their feedback, right? So they want to have their 2 cents in there, and that's fine. You respond to the condition list, and that's when they can release your permit, okay? What's happening in that 2 months beyond the conceptual design is the construction plan.
That's the fun part. That's the sexy part.
That's the part that we love, right? So that in that background work, there's the logistics, the sub trades, right? You got your mechanical guys, you got your plumbers, your HVAC,
you got your weather,
electricians, you got this weather. Was hoping for a sunny day. We don't have it. It's okay. We keep on rolling. But all that stuff's happening behind the scenes, so that when the permit comes in, we're not at a standstill here, right?
Yeah.
So I think here, and we'll get into construction and pricing and timelines in a few minutes here, but I think here we started maybe 5-6 weeks ago. Like by this weekend, like we're gonna have a roof on here.
So we're basically 2 months from when we know we're going through the project to permit. Right after permit, weather permitting, we're going. As soon as permit's issued, it's going. We're about 5 weeks in this project so far. So let's go through the construction process, kind of once we get our permit to next. We'll do that right now. So I collaborate with the client to find the property. We get connected with an awesome construction team. They work with them to make sure it all makes sense, get the permits issued. Permits are issued for this, and we are clearly standing in a project that is under construction. We're 4, maybe 5 weeks in from build. What is this, first, second week of April? So as soon as the snow is ready and gone, we're starting to go. What are the first couple things that you do on site to get everything ready to rock and roll and start building?
Well, snow's not completely gone, but hopefully we're pretty darn close.
Welcome to Ontario, baby.
Yeah. So usually, like once again, past the planning stage, we've got the permit in hand. It's go time from a construction standpoint, right? So aside from your usual site prep, that's very important because you don't want any kind of hidden costs, which we'll get into in a second with pricing of stuff that could creep up. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. There was a tree right there.
Tree's got to go, baby.
There was an awning right there.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, right? And if you miss 4, 5, 6 things, then your budget, your fixed costs could start, blowing 100%. Out of proportion.
That's why we do the feasibility study, though, baby.
You got it. We get those numbers as streamlined as we can for the client to make sure that what they're paying on day one is the same thing that they're paying at the end of the project. So it's very, very important. So let's talk about some timelines or the construction process. What we're standing on here is a mono slab, okay, that's designed by our engineer, and then the spec of this unit is about 600 square feet, 2 bedrooms. Bedroom drives the end result for us because that helps with the rental income, which we can talk about more as well, and what the tenants are going to be bringing in the future. Now you're starting to see some municipalities being pushed to 3 bedrooms.
Really?
Yeah, so you maybe start to see a little bit of involvement in that standpoint.
Just because there's a shortage and they're trying to push more of those?
3 means family, so kind of the housing units from that standpoint. But this one's a 2-bedroom unit. It's got independent everything. Okay, so we have a 100 amp service coming out here. We have a gas line coming in here. We have our laundry unit coming in here, bathroom, kitchen. The whole space is designed and to feel like it's one self-contained unit.
But the client also collaborates with you. Obviously, you're bringing your expertise, like, hey, here's our experience, here's what we like, here's what we've seen work in the past. But they're also kind of sprinkling in their own little.
Client makes the decisions, man.
True.
We just try to guide them as best as we can, and watching the costs, their dollars. Maybe they're not. And then we get it to a point of let's start the project. Okay, we got super high ceilings here. I think we're up to about 9 feet here.
Makes a difference.
Smaller square
space.
footage, bigger ceilings, bigger windows, patio door here, more natural light, and then when you get into your selections, meaning your finishes, the lights, the brights, the whites, then that's the way to cheat code 600 square feet to feel like maybe 900 square feet or 1,000 square feet.
And that's something that somebody that doesn't have experience either renovating or constructing can come to you or come to people like us to say, hey, look, you know, you guys have built these types of spaces from scratch. You've done the good, the bad, the ugly, and we've seen what works and what doesn't work. Because ultimately, as an investor, you want a great return, but you also want a great product.
Absolutely.
Right? So we're building new here. We are at the slab. We're framing this in a day, you said, which is crazy, crazy. The boys are here. We made them take a break a little bit. They're done the coffee break, so they're getting going. After framing, what happens next?
Yeah, so I want to take a pause on framing. So just before that, with our mono slab, we got to get our services here, right? So something that's important with the ADU, different than to like a new build or a custom home, is there's a different way to pull the services, okay?
Water, gas, hydro.
You got it. Generally speaking, your sewer and your water can come from the principal dwelling, whether it's through the rear or the basement. On this one, we had the sewer come out through the front of the house, so we'll show you guys that in a few minutes. Then we have our water line, our power, and our gas coming in through a trench. You don't always need gas. We've done many units where it's fully electric. That's something that you work with the clients and kind of see what the trade-offs are, sub-metering and things of that nature.
Those things you guys decide before we even get the permit in, though. We're like that's when you guys were actually on site with us before you even applied for the permit.
Exactly.
Because we were talking about, okay, well, what's going to be the most cost-effective way to actually get a yes from the city on the permit, but also try and save some costs. So I think we trench into the back corner of the house because there's going to be a shorter distance to hit the hydro, and then wastewater is going to go around to the front because you mentioned that's something they wanted to see.
You got it, yeah. And then another important factor, I'll use that term again, case by case. Even when you get to the building side of things, you're going to get an inspector on this project and make sure that everything's done according to building code, right? St. Catharines has an independent plumbing inspector and an independent HVAC inspector just to show you the emphasis that they put on those two mechanicals, right? So that's the route that they wanted to take, so that's the route we took. But in some other municipalities, we can go directly through and get our 4-inch to the basement. It's a little bit easier. One other item too is that we briefly touched upon this. It is the fully tenanted building.
True.
Right? So we want as minimal disruption as possible. I know you're looking around, you're probably like, how is this not disruptive? It is disruptive, but I mean power disruption or sewer disruption or water disruption, right? So they can keep on living their lives and working from home and their pets and whatever they got.
That is a concern though, right? People do say, okay, well, do we do the build before we have tenants occupy? It is a little bit of give and take, but working with experienced contractors and project coordinators is they can understand that and say, hey, if you want to tenant the property, get a little bit of rental income coming in, there's ways we can set up the project to make sure we're minimizing that disturbance. We're not shutting the water off every day. They're not out of power every other day. They don't have people on site unless it's necessary, and they're being purposeful with their time. So that is an important consideration.
Exactly.
The investor can, carry the property, make a little bit of money, and then still execute on a project like this.
Schedule disruptions as minimal as possible. Now let's talk about framing, and then we can get out of their way. So, beautiful thing about this project and many of our projects is we use panelization for framing. And what does that mean? It basically means that it's assembled off-site and then brought on-site and then all put together, okay? What that allows us to do is to save tons of time. The cost is relatively the same or on par with your manual build. The product is superior. Is 10 out of 10. And then beyond that, minimal waste on-site, okay? And then once again, I want to check timelines, okay?
Time, baby. It's all about time. All right, we got to let the guys get after this. Let's get out front, finish this off. Awesome. So for the next part of the construction process, we'll go through a little bit of, where we're going to go from when the framing's done to when they get the keys and we can get another tenant in there. And then we'll talk about the money side of things. I know I'm curious. I have a little bit of experience, but I'd be curious to see how this one's going to shake out. So after the guys finish up the framing, roof truss is going on. Roof, what's kind of the next few things?
Yeah, exactly. The trusses are right there. So those will be popping on later today. And then we'll sheathe and then we'll start our exterior finish, right? Getting our shingles on or metal roofing, depending on the approach that we're going to go. Here's a shingled roof. Start their exterior finish. Our windows and our doors will be coming in. Then we're weather tight, hopefully by next week.
That'd be nice.
Which means we get inside, we finish our rough-ins on the inside, right? Because the mechanical services came in there, they're trenching. Now they got to go inside and do their rough-ins. And then after that, we're on insulation, drywall, and finish
then
it,
she's
man.
pretty much done.
Right.
Yeah. So as that process comes, that's the sexy part. That's when it starts to look like an actual unit.
That's when it has life.
Yeah, right. People can really start to see the vision. Now, clients have the choice between, taking your suggestions, but also bringing in their own ideas for not even just the design, but also the finish. So if they want to do, their own trim, if they want to pick out their own floors, they want to pick out their own paint color. Those are all things that you guys collaborate before we even start the build. Like,
exactly.
Those things are already done.
Yeah, we kind of prescribe a model to them.
Yep.
Like, hey, choose from these 4 or 5 floorings and choose from these 4 or 5 tiles and so on like that. Because the reason why we would like to put in a prescription, let's say, is the timelines.
Well, timing is just the product then.
That's right.
We know the product, we trust it, regardless of which they pick.
You can warranty it.
Yeah.
It's got durability. It's a rental unit. You want it to last forever. We don't want you guys calling us back in 1 to 2 years. We want you calling back in 15 years saying, when's the next project?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So once the construction process is done, the big question is, what's the final tab gonna be? So we're gonna get into the numbers right now. Now, what we're building, what the project is, and how we're doing it, that's interesting. That's really interesting for me and you. We're involved in this space, and this is our business, but it comes down to the dollars and the cents. That's what people want to know. What's the final tab going to be to build a sexy 2-bedroom, 600 square foot ADU?
For sure. We talk a lot about dollars and cents in our last few videos. I do want to go over that summary again, and then I'm going to get exactly into the cost for this, okay? When it comes to these detached units, you have your garage retrofit conversions, right? So this can be around about $100,000, maybe a little bit more depending on the size and what needs to go into the reinforcement.
So existing detached garage.
Bingo. So that's your entry level, let's call it. Okay. Then when you get into new construction, you start hitting that $200,000 mark. Okay?
And that's what we're doing here. Brand new structure, everything from scratch.
Nothing was there except for a tree. Right. So brand new. Then you get into the kind of the strategies. Is it single story? Is it going to have a basement? Is it 2 stories? And so on. Okay. So that's where that number can shift off of the 200 and get greater. Here, as you can see behind us, single story, 600 square foot unit, mono slab. So there's no basement there. It's a cost effective approach to get this unit executed. So we were at $225,000 for this construction bill. Don't forget, we're in St. Catharines, and we went after the grant on this one, and we are officially approved for that grant, or our clients were. So that $225,000 bill will essentially be subsidized by $80,000.
So we're looking, all said and done, we're in the low 100s, mid 100s to build a 2-bedroom, brand new detached unit. And what we'll talk about after is the numbers for the acquisition, the build costs, adjust for the rebate, and then the additional rental income and appreciation that building something new like this would add to the project. But we're basically 2 months for permit, 3 to 4 months for build, close out, give the keys, get it tenanted, and we're going to get another 80 grand back from the city.
Yes, and I'll talk to you guys about that grant quickly here. It comes from the Housing Accelerator Fund, and it probably sounds fake to you. Probably sounded fake to you when you first heard about it. It sounded fake to me. We had to do some real deep dive on our due diligence on this grant, but it's real. Okay, this is just for the city of St. Catharines. Other municipalities are coming out with their own grants and forgivable loans and rebate programs and so on. Here's a true grant. Okay, once you get your permit to build, you can submit for the grant.
Yes.
Then once you start building, you give them updates via expenses and photos, literally, to show them the progress. Then when you're done, you submit your occupancy permit saying, we're finished, someone's moving in, and guess what? $80,000.
That's incredible. And just to be clear, that's not something, like obviously you're involved and you know how the process works, but that's not something that you physically do for the client because it's in the property's in their name, it's their project, but it's fairly straightforward.
It's fairly straightforward. It's pretty easy. It's a prescribed list of maybe 6 to 8 items. And the majority of them, like we said, is straightforward and just kind of like what's your permit, what's your cost, and things of that nature.
And I know this is a big reason why the clients decided to focus on projects in this location as opposed to others like Hamilton, Waterloo Region, or even London and Brantford area was because of the grant would make the project that much more profitable for them. So let's get back out front and we'll talk about what the final numbers are and then some quick tips for you guys if you're considering doing whether it's new construction projects, acquiring investment property, or a little bit of both. So a big draw for the clients was to come on down to St. Catharines, take advantage of that grant, but they're investors. They want to make sure that they're getting a great return on their investment. It kind of doubles down. They also get to make a really great product for the tenants and for the property, which is where they can collaborate with you. So the clients, they find a great project, they figure out what they can build, they figure out if the numbers make sense, how much rental income it's already generating, how much rental income they'll be able to get from a project like this. And fun fact, if you guys are building new, whether it's a new ADU in the basement or in the rear yard, attached or detached, not rent controlled, built after 2019. So this project here, they're going to be mid to low hundreds after the rebate to build it, and it's going to add easily an additional $200 to probably $2,200 a month in rental income. Again, not rent controlled. So we get an upstairs duplex unit, downstairs duplex unit, and then one in the back. Pretty much all market rents, if not premiums, because we have great brand new living space. For an investor, the control and the income you're generating, plus how much it's going to cost them and how much it's going to raise the value of the home, these projects can be a great option for you real estate investors out there. And you get to collaborate with a construction partner that can save time, money, and energy. So from your perspective, to build something like this, what are a few quick tips for people that are saying, hey, Yasser, hey, Zach, I want to look at building a project like this?
Well, I think the planning is the most important, as always.
The plan is always the most important. Not everyone likes to plan perfectly every time, though.
But you need to, and working with good real estate partners is very important. So you get into a product that you're comfortable with and makes dollars and cents at the end as you went over the numbers, right? So, some quick tips, right? Zoning, bylaw, making sure those are kosher and aligned with what we're looking for here.
And you can look up most of that stuff before you even go look at properties.
It's all virtual.
You'll collab with clients. If they come to you and say, hey, I need a project I can build this on, you can know most of that stuff online.
Exactly, especially now in this market, and you can attest to this, things are a little bit more slower, more balanced.
Yep.
So you have time to kind of make sure that you do your due diligence. The hot market of old of go, go, go is gone and hopefully never comes back.
Conditional periods just give us a little bit more time to make an educated decision as an investor and helps you get more accurate numbers for these guys as well.
Exactly. So then we'll go in there and make sure our planning is, on point. Then we'll come back and do our site feasibility test. Are there tenants in the unit? Are there not? Those things are very important. So I would say if you can get those aligned, then that should set you up for a successful project in the sense of your numbers should all add up at the end. And then just to double down on what you said earlier about the financial breakdown, let's call it 150 grand on this ADU.
Yeah.
And you're bringing in 2,000, 21.
2,000. You guys remember the 1% rule of yesterday, many years ago? You're building better than the 1% rule.
Exactly.
I can't go out and buy a 1% rule in Southern Ontario. Not even close, but I can go build it. So if you have existing properties, we're getting a lot of calls from people with existing properties. Hey, can I build this? Hey, can I build that? That is an amazing question for the construction partners at 555. They can hop on a call, do a quick site visit, or just look at everything online and say, yeah, you know what? It could be worth looking at. And you can also take that time to look to see if there's any grants, any funds available for you to add additional units. There's lots of ways to figure out how to find value. I think the biggest thing from the construction perspective is what can I build, how long is it going to take, and what's it going to cost? And that is a very case-by-case basis, but you can get to that point pretty quick.
Absolutely.
So if you guys have questions about a project you already have, or you're looking to acquire a new one, you want to know what's feasible, what it's going to cost, get in touch with the guys at 555 Construction. They're very experienced here in Southern Ontario. If you guys have questions about what types of properties you can acquire, how much they cost, what they rent out for, reach out to us and the other partners on the Canadian Real Estate Channel. We'd love to get in touch. Until next time, guys, take care.